Hey, I'm George from George Made This, and today I'm going to be making a pair of cornhole boards for Dremel. So to start, I've been to my local timber yard and bought some 4x1 or 100x25mm pine, and this is going to be used for the main frame of the cornhole boards. Now this is called prepared timber, my local timber yard, but it might be called PAR, planed all round, at yours. And a lot of places will do it in all sorts of sizes. I've got all my dimensions for my cornhole boards from dimensions.com, and they say that a standard set of cornhole boards is 4 inches in height, just over 100mm for us over in the UK. So going by what dimensions.com say, we need a cornhole board at 1200 by 600 millimeters, 120 by 60 centimeters. So that's what that bit of plywood is. I've gone for 12mm thick, which I asked the timber yard to cut for me to that size, so then I didn't have to try and wrestle a big sheet and I could put it in my car. Now here I'm just measuring because we do need the total thickness of the cornhole board to be 100mm. So where I've bought the 100 by 25mm timber, I'm now cutting it down to 88mm, so that plus my 12mm top gives us the 100mm or 4-inch thick cornhole board. Most timber yards will cut timber to your specifications. It just might cost you a little bit more, so keep that in mind if you do want to make these cornhole boards. So to assemble the frames, I'm just using glue and nails. That'll be more than enough. You can see I've put 2 clamps on either end, just where a couple of my boards had a slight twist to them, so they'll just keep them in place while the glue dries. I'm using that because that's what I have access to. You can absolutely use screws for this project. So with the frames all put together, we can start marking out for our hole. So we want to make a 150mm hole, 15cm hole, and I've marked down 23 centimeters from the top edge there and halfway across the width of my board. So once we've got that point in, we can drill a 3mm hole for the pin on the circle cutting jig, and then we can start cutting. I'm using the Dremel 8260 there, which is the new cordless tool from Dremel, and it's really nice for using with this circle cutting attachment so that you don't have to work around a wire the whole time. So it's very important when you're using this to go low and slow, and by that I mean you don't want to be cutting more than a few millimeters at a time, and you want to be going really slow. I've sped up the footage here just to make it a bit more interesting to watch. Now I've got the 8260 in the plunger outer attachment, and this is just to take off all the sharp edges. I've just got a round over bit in the Dremel 8260. I'm just trying to work out the height, so we want the top of the cornhole board to sit at about 12 inches, 305mm, 300 will do fine, and then I can get a rough idea of what I want the legs to be, so I cut them to about 29 centimeters in length. Now a handy tip, if you're cutting a few things the same length, get one to the right size, and then you can line up 3 or 4 pieces and cut 3 or 4 at exactly the same length just by really gently butting it up to your saw blade. I'm cutting a 9-degree angle on the feet. You don't have to do this with a miter saw, you can do this with a hand saw. It will just take a bit more working out of the angles. And then I'm just marking a centre hole here for the legs, and they'll get drilled through with an 8mm drill bit because I'm using an M8 coach bolt to go through from the outside, just hitting it in so it creates a square indent which is just below the head of that bolt. So to help with their rotation, we're then going to round the top off. First I cut most of the waste away on the bandsaw, and then take it over to the disc sander on my lathe to round them off and get them nice and neat. Holding them together with tape just keeps the pair for one cornhole board symmetrical. Then we can fit them back on and just check that they work. This is where something that I did earlier to some of the other bits of wood occurred to me that I didn't actually do to these bits of wood. So the bits of wood that I've cut here for the legs are still at 100mm in width, when I actually need them at the 88mm that we cut the other bits for the frame to. So here I go back and forward trying to figure out why they won't fold, when in reality I just made a mistake. This just gives you an idea of how the feet work. They're not going to be that loose on the final model. I will tighten them up so that they don't come out on their own accord. And you can tell that these are the wrong feet because I've had to adjust the angle so they sit flat. But before I paint them, I go back and I remake the legs and they work perfectly at the right width. Now, I really wanted the design to be quite simple, but also a bit bold, and you'll see the bold in the colour choices that I've made. But here I'm just using again the 8260 and the plunger outer attachment to route what is going to be an arrow or a chevron, if you want to call it that, into the face of the cornhole boards. Now you can see here that my router drifted away from the guide that I'd put in place. So the good thing about this is, because I'm painting the boards, we can go around and we can fill any mistakes like this. We can also fill in the nail holes that were created by the pin nailer. Now I used 2-part filler there, which dries really quickly. Any wood filler will do. But now that it's dry, I can go back over and start sanding back all that filler and also get the boards ready for painting. So I've gone for 3 different colours for these cornhole boards. The pattern is going to be the same across both of them because I want them to look like a set. So I've gone for this blue, which is quite close to the Dremel blue, and then I found a nice red that went with it as well. So they get a couple of coats of paint on the tops and all the way around the edges as well, keeping a divide between the 2 colours. And then in that groove that I created with the V-bit and the plunge router attachment, I'm going to be painting it black. And I've got some lovely thick black enamel paint that will go in there. In hindsight, I'm thinking I should have done this after I'd varnished the red and the blue, but it's no big deal. A quick tip with paint: if, like with this, I'll only have to do the 1 coat because it's such a bold and thick paint, I'm peeling off all of the masking tape before the paint dries. And what this does is it stops the paint from sticking to the masking tape and preventing it from potentially peeling up when I go to remove the masking tape later. And that leaves a really nice crisp line around that groove and gives a nice separation between the red and the blue. So with those painted, it was time to get the legs on. So a carriage bolt goes on from the outside first, then I put a washer, then the leg, then another washer, and then the nut on the end to hold it all together. Then using a socket set, I can tighten the leg up and work out how much tension I need to put on it so that the leg will stay in the frame. And then here's the leg process on the other side. Then I can remove the toolbox I was using to hold it up to height, and there we go. The legs sit really nicely. So that's the set completed. Next thing to do is go and try them out. I'm really pleased with how these came out. And as you can see by the footage, they work really nicely. After a few rounds, which I won, thought it'd be good to try out some trick shots. Thank you so much for watching. If you do make a set of these, make sure you let Dremel UK and myself know over on Instagram.